let's talk a little bit about titles and the quote unquote biggest title match on the card, which is the WCW International Heavyweight title match with Rick Rude defending against the Nature Boy Ric Flair with Fifi and Terry Taylor as the special guest second referee on the outside. So the WCW International Heavyweight title, they spent the whole show hyping up how this is a legitimate world title. You have to respect it as a world title. And, you know, if you tell Rick Rude otherwise, he will kill you. So I'm going to take an attempt here, and you're the historian, but I'm going to try to recount how the international title came to be, how, you know, it was supposed to be this legitimate world title. So WCW, the champion of WCW a few months prior was Vader, and still is at this time. Vader's the WCW world champion. The NWA champion a few months prior was Ric Flair. When the schism was official and WCW became its own entity, they recognized Ric Flair because he was the current NWA world title. He became the default WCW International Heavyweight Champion, then lost it to Rick Rude, and that's how Rick Rude has it now. So in some twisted way, there's a lineage from, in WCW's world, of the NWA title into the WCW International. Is that how it happened, or is there another entity there that I'm missing?
That's pretty much what it was. I mean, during the Bill Watts era, I think they brought back the NWA world title because they had the big gold belt back from Ric Flair when he took it to WWF. And NWA was still a thing. I mean, he was stripped of the WCW title in 91, but stayed NWA champion for a few weeks, I think, after that, until the NWA also stripped him. And then there was just an issue of working with WCW again, keeping the NWA separate. And that's how the international title came to be once they decided to be separate again from WCW.
And it's a shame that Rick Rude won this title 3 times, but when you think of WCW and NWA world champions, you know, he's not obviously in there because of the name change, and the NWA title didn't go away. So yeah, it was it's a bad timing for Rick Rude, but he was a great champion, and he looked like a world champion when he comes out there with that very recognizable belt.
Yeah, no doubt. He definitely does. And recognizable tights as always too.
Oh yeah. The Halloween themed tights are awesome. And some of his best. Should be in the Rick Rude tights airbrush Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no doubt. Especially since Fifi ended up becoming Ric Flair's wife. Now it's kind of been more funny to look back and realize she was his maid and on Rick Rude's tights back then.
Yes, absolutely. So we get Buffer again, and that's the 4th time. So this is the last time that we will see him, I believe. I don't think he does the main event. I can't remember. Anyway, they, like I said, they mentioned they tried the entire show to make sure we knew this was a legit world title match. We get a lot of Rude taunting Fifi and Flair focusing on Rude's leg. Taylor does insert himself a few times, stopping Rude from cheating when he tried to grab the ropes, and he does it a couple times. Then we get an epic moment that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is the snot flying out of Rick Rude's nose during the camel clutch spot. Oh my gosh, it's Snot Rocket Central there, so that was kind of disgusting. But then we get some really cool moments. The Nature Boy hits a top rope axe handle to the outside. I mean, he's hitting top rope moves in this match. What the hell? What world are we living in where Ric Flair is like accurate from his top rope with his top rope arsenal?
I mean, the bigger thing for me was he comes off the top to the outside. This has to be the only event that's ever happened. I mean, I've watched wrestling since 1986, and I cannot recall one other time where Ric Flair goes off the top rope to the outside. It's like the anti-move that he should be doing. It's like everything he stands against, you know. I don't know. I was blown away by it. He does it twice.
Yeah. Yeah, and he wants to make Rick Rude look good, man. That he knows that this they got to legitimize this world title. So what better way than have high risk Ric Flair? Taylor, like I said, inserts himself a couple more times, stopping the usage of a chair by Rude. And then one moment I loved was when Flair hits the Rude Awakening on Rude. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, definitely rare.
We talk a lot about moves that are common in wrestling that we hate, or moments or sequences that we see over and over. There's one that I absolutely hate, and I get the reasoning behind it, but I still think no matter what, it doesn't matter who you are, it looks like shit. And the fact that we have Rick Rude and Ric Flair in here, 2 of the greatest of all time, and it still looks like shit, and that is what I like to call the flying standing attack. And that is where when Flair goes to the top and he comes down and, you know, Rude puts the boot up. Like, what the fuck move was that supposed to be? He just looks like he's jumping down into stand. And I know it happens all the time in wrestling, but it is so dumb. And I get the rationale and the logic is you see the boot come up and you're trying to halt whatever move you were doing, but like that makes still, it looks like garbage and it makes no sense. So the flying standing attack by Flair does not work.
Yeah, I think I've become numb to things like that because there's so many other moves today that are just so dumb. It's like I'll take one of those any day compared to some of the shit I see today. So, but true, to your point, true.
Yeah, I mean, I prefer it over a reverse Hurricane Rana any day of the week.
There you go.
Because so Randy Anderson ends up getting bumped on an Irish whip reversal, and then predictably the Red Rooster comes in and he gets one too. He gets knocked out as well, or gets dazed a little bit. And Rude goes and gets the brass knucks, but Flair cuts him off, hits a little back suplex and gets the knucks and clocks Rude. 1, 2, nope. You think it's going to be a 3, but Randy Anderson stops Taylor from counting, and he DQs Flair. Rude retains. Did not love the finish. I mean, we already have the almost finish that got kind of reversed in the Austin Rhodes match. We get the time limit draw. We have a count out in the Orndorff Steamboat match. Like, I just want to finish here, right? And that's the only thing I hated about this was that the finish wasn't a pin one way or the other. They went 99% of the way there for a screw job. I think both guys would have looked fine, but we get the DQ and Rude retains the title.
Yeah, it seems like I just never could get behind this feud. I don't know why. Maybe this was why all the weird stipulations and finishes that were just so all over the place. I don't know why Terry Taylor was here. I mean, I don't know if you noticed at one point in the match, Randy Anderson goes for a pin. It's a 2 count, and he rolls out to get out of the way of the kick out. But then Taylor rolls in like Randy Anderson wasn't going to get right back in, and it's like really awkward. Like, did he think that was going to be the finish or something? I don't know what was going on. But having Terry Taylor out there did nothing. It did not play into much of anything as far as the same finish could have been done without him. So I'm not sure what he was doing there.
Yeah, definitely overbooked, not needed. And he also got promo time that could have been used to, help us explain some of the background of some of these matches. So yeah, waste of time in multiple ways.
And also the weird point of the match where the ring attendant guy kind of takes the brass knucks, I think, and carries them somewhere else, and Flair has to go pick them back up and go, "What is going on?" Jesse's trying to cover it, saying that guy tried to hand him the brass knucks or something. The photographer, and it's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, when I saw that, I was like, Is there somebody that's in the ring crew? I don't remember this angle. Like, is somebody going to jump out? And it's like, no, it's just some dumbass.
Maybe they didn't smarten people up back then and really kept it true life old school. Who knows?
Yeah, which is great. So after the match, Flair grabs the title because he's pissed, and then Rude goes and grabs Fifi, and Flair attacks him and hits a figure 4 on the ramp because, you pay money, you want to get as many figure 4s as possible in there. The refs break it up. Ultimately, the first part of the match was really good and pretty action-packed, and like I said, you got to see Flair do some really crazy stuff. And then it slowed down and the finish did it no favors. So it was almost like a tale of two cities for me. The early part was great and it was good. And I was like, okay, Rude and Flair have a little bit more chemistry than most people say, because they're always known as, I mean, you even alluded to it, 2 Hall of Famers, 2 amazing wrestlers. I like almost everything both of them do, but together they just never clicked. And I was like, this match is clicking. And then the last half of it just didn't.
It also makes you wonder where they were going with this, really, because at this point, of course, as we know, Flair ended up going against Vader at Starrcade, but that wasn't the original plan. It was going to be Sid and Vader. So where did Flair and Rude fit into the original Starrcade plans, I wonder, if this was going to continue and maybe lead up to something else?
The DQ finish would make sense then. I mean, it would lead to some sort of, yet again, another stipulation, hopefully without Terry Taylor.
Yeah, just a few days later, they had to scramble up the entire whole situation for Starrcade. So I'm guessing something probably got scrapped along the way.
Absolutely. So the match goes almost 20 minutes and it gets 3.25 stars by Meltzer. I thought that was actually pretty generous for the most part, but it's good. I mean, there's nothing bad about Rude and Flair. It's just not as great. A lot of times you got 1 + 1 = 3. This was 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, it was kind of okay. I think 3.25 stars might be a little high. I'm thinking this is a 3-star for me, but overall, it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it while rewatching it. I think back then I just followed the stories a lot more. There wasn't a whole lot to it, and I don't know, like you said, overbooked and just a basic match pretty much.